As a reference, we have a table showing us several of the Ethernet standards out there today, the kind of media over which Ethernet might run on a given standard, what the bandwidth limitation is of that standard, and what the distance limitation is. In the early days of Ethernet, we were probably going to be using either 10 base 5 or 10 base 2. Remember, the 10 refers to the speed, the bandwidth. 10 indicates 10 megabits per second. The base in 10 base 5 represents baseband as opposed to broadband, meaning that all of the frequencies on the media are used by this transmission. It's not like we have channels like you have on a cable TV in your home. That would be an example of broadband, but here baseband, we're using all of the available frequencies for this one transmission. And the 5 in 10 base 5, that indicates 500 meters as the distance limitation. Now, that is not a hard and fast rule that we can always turn to. For example, 10 base 2, the 2 is suggesting perhaps that we have a distance limitation of 200 meters. In actuality, it's close to 200 meters, but it's really 185 meters. Another very popular Ethernet standard for many years was 10 base T. This allowed us to start using unshielded twisted pair, and we could use lower end unshielded twisted pair, category 3 specifically, that was used commonly in telephone systems within businesses. You might have existing PBX, existing private branch exchange wiring for a telephone system that's already running to your offices. Well, installers just started using that existing category 3 wiring to connect to Ethernet devices, and that worked great, but we were limited to 10 megabits per second. The distance limitation was 100 meters. And we won't go through all of these, but notice the speeds keep increasing and increasing on the table. 100 indicating 100 megabits per second, 1000 representing 1 gigabit per second. There's also 10G, that's a shortcut way of writing at 10 gigabits per second, and even 100G, 100 gigabits per second. And when you start to get into some of the higher speeds, if you want to travel fairly significant distances, you probably are going to be using some type of fiber optic cabling. Notice that most of the higher speed standards are going to be using multi-mode fiber, labeled as MMF, or single-mode fiber, SMF. And generally, single-mode fiber can go further than multi-mode fiber because we don't have to contend with the issue of multi-mode delay distortion. As an example, 1000 base LX. Check this one out. It can run on either multi-mode or single-mode fiber. But if we're doing multi-mode, we're limited to 550 meters. If we're using single mode, we can go up to 5 kilometers. And this is not to say that every high-speed Ethernet network is necessarily using fiber. With recent developments in unshielded twisted pair technology, we could have category 6A cabling running at a speed of 10 billion, 10 gigabits per second, with a distance limitation of 100 meters. And now that we understand some of the basic Ethernet standards that are out there, the device in our network to which our Ethernet devices are going to be attaching, it's probably going to be an Ethernet switch. And a switch logically works about the same as an Ethernet bridge. A bridge is an older technology developed back in the 80s. Switches are faster than bridges. They have dedicated circuitry called ASICs, application-specific integrated circuits, but they both make forwarding decisions the same way. They make forwarding decisions based on destination MAC addresses, media access control addresses, 48-bit addresses that are burned in to the network interface card, the NIC, in our end stations. And I thought it would be fun as we start to talk about basic switch operation and bridge operation to go on location. So in our next video, as we start to take a look at switch operation, we're going to go down to the Bahamas. We're going to be in Paradise Island, and we're going to be using the Royal Towers Hotel, which has a big bridge interconnecting a couple of towers. We're going to use that as a metaphor to see how traffic would be forwarded across a bridge and which traffic would or would not be forwarded across a bridge. We'll see you in just a moment in the Bahamas.